Good afternoon, class, and what will be our final lecture for the CSIT project. This session is focusing on the technical report, and each week we've been looking at the various chapters, and today's class is focusing on the final chapter, which is called the conclusion. And wow, what a period it has been. Has been an amazing few months as well. During this period, you would have probably wanted to have quit several times, but you never give up, and we've reached this point here, and we look back rejoicing. Hallelujah. All right. Our word for today is simply on that as well. Our word for today is don't wait until you reach your goal to be proud of yourself. Be proud of every step you take towards achieving your goal. So while you are happy you've gotten to this point and you're celebrating you've reaching this destination, right? But the journey has been an awesome one. It has been a tremendous one. And the reason that journey is so important is that journey, while it may have been tough and at times may have been, a bit daunting, at times you may have wanted to quit, to give up, times you are bored, maybe frustrated as well, but you've been learning as you go along, and they are developing so many different things within you, and all of these really about your will to win. And we've reached this far together, and it's something really we should be proud about. So today's class, we're focusing on chapter 10, which is the conclusion. Let's take a look back in terms of what we've covered so far. For the final report, this is really an academic report, right? The general term for it is FPR, or Final Project Report, and it consists of several chapters. As I said before, the chapters may vary based on who your supervisor is, but generally based on the assignment briefing sheet and based on the information given by the university in the past as well. These are some of the typical chapters. This report will have a title page. You will include an abstract. You will have your acknowledgement, and then you'd have a table of contents. And within your table of contents now, you'll have the various chapters. Now, after your table of contents, you will have the details of each of the different chapters, which we've already done, except for this chapter, which is our conclusion chapter. So let's take a look back. In chapter 1, we introduced the project. We indicated what the project is about, the aim and objectives of the project, etc. In chapter 2 now that we've gotten a name for your project, we started doing our background research into the area of the project. And our background research helps us to learn more about the project. So for example, if you're developing a learning management system that focuses on gamification, learning analytics, etc., your background research will have delved deeper into learning analytics and to gamification and other areas as well, and even into learning management systems, so that you can learn more about the functional requirements, you can learn more about how to implement learning analytics and gamification, etc., within the application, right? Then in chapter 3, you focus on legal, social, ethical, professional issues. As a software developer, it's important that you recognize these, because the software you're developing can change people's life as well, right? Then we looked at potential risks that could have impacted the project from completing on time. Now, moved on to chapter 5. Chapter 5 is where we started discussing the full set of requirements, right? Now, you would have initially come up with those requirements from the project planning module. And here you delve deeper into each requirement, providing greater detail into each one, right? After completing the requirements analysis, we then proceeded to the design chapter. And in the design chapter, what we looked at designing the database, which is the back end, as well as designing the front end. In terms of designing the back end, we've looked at ER diagrams, and we would have done a conversion from a conceptual to a logical ER diagram, if you want to call it. We normalized it. And then we came up with a list of tables. That was the back-end design. And for the front-end design, we developed rough sketches, then you looked at wireframe, and then we developed a low-fidelity prototype. This basically looks at what your screens would look like. Having done the design, we then started our coding in the software implementation chapter. So in this chapter, we focus on building the application. After the application was built, we then went on to test the application. And in chapter 8, we focus on how we went about testing the application, describing the details of the various types of tests, your test plan, the different types of data you use, the results of your testing, your defects log, etc., as well as an analysis of the results. Then after that, we did an evaluation of the software. Now, this software evaluation was more from a design perspective, looking at a heuristic evaluation of the software. We looked at whether the software conformed to the various Nielsen heuristics as well. So that's what we would have done in chapter 9. Now that we've evaluated the software, we can now conclude as we look back on the process. And that's what the conclusion chapter is. So let's get now into this chapter, which is the conclusion chapter, as we wind down on this project. So for this chapter, it's going to be the shortest chapter in the entire write-up. This chapter basically is a critical look, as a self-critical reflection of the extent to which you have achieved the objectives that you set. So notice it's self-critical because you are critiquing yourself. Here, you are required to not big up yourself necessarily, but also not just put on yourself either, but to be critical of your success, to be able to recognize where you've done, what you've done well, what needs to improve as well. All right. So the same way, if you had to evaluate someone else who would have done this project, you have to evaluate yourself. And in so doing, you are not going to be penalized for acknowledging that you failed to achieve all of your objectives. Because remember, at the start, we talked about the written report as being something grand. We knew fully well at the start that the written report is something that is beyond what we will expect to actually achieve in the programming. But here now you will look back and recognize that you weren't able to achieve all of them, right? So I don't want you pretending that you didn't achieve all of them. It's okay to acknowledge the fact that you may have failed to achieve some of them, especially some of the advanced one you may not have been able to achieve. But you would be criticized if you gave the impression that you didn't notice that you failed to meet some of your objectives. So note the word from the university. You would be penalized if you failed to recognize that you did not achieve some of your objectives, but you would not be penalized if you acknowledge the fact that you didn't achieve all of them. Okay? All right. So this chapter is where you will demonstrate the ability to reflect on your work. All right. How are we going to do that? Well, this chapter is made up of 4 parts. There's the introduction. Every chapter has an introduction, and what you discuss in the introduction is pretty much the same in each case. Then we look at the task you've completed. We've looked at the product you've built, as well as we'll discuss the experiences you've gained throughout this journey. So here you are discussing the journey that you would have gone through as well. Okay, so let's start with the first of these tasks. So in terms of the introduction generally, we would suggest that you include a statement on the purpose or the importance of this chapter, and then you will discuss what is covered in this chapter, right? So the purpose of the chapter we would have mentioned here, which is a self-critical reflection of the extent to which you've achieved your objectives, right? And what will be covered is included in the table of content here, which is to reflect on the task completed, the product built, as well as discuss the experiences you've gained through this journey. How can we write that? Let's take an example. So an example of an introduction would be, the student was required to undertake a complex individual project. This was an academic exercise based on the creation of a practical artifact, which included the writing of a substantial technical dissertation. The final chapter of this project is a culmination of the work done and the experiences gained during the project development. This chapter highlights my successes and the things I would do differently should I have the chance to do them again. It also takes a critical outlook of this software artifact. So that's a simple introduction, 1 paragraph, more than enough. Now we get into the task completed. So the task completed would be in terms of your functional requirements, right? Or the requirements chapter. So you're going to take a look at those tasks. So here you could discuss the tasks you've actually completed. You may consider using a list of requirements as a starting point, and from that list you could basically summarize how many tasks completed, etc. Right? From the task completed, state any was done differently from how you intended in the storyboard. So please note, this is not just simply saying, well, I completed 10 of the 12 tasks. Yes, you will include that, but you need to also discuss how things were done differently. So you discuss the whole development process here, if things were done the way you wanted or were done differently. For the tasks that you did not complete, what were some of the major challenges or problems that kept you from completing these, right? So those are some of the things that you look at, right? So based on that, an example could be, the requirements chapter outlined 25 tasks to be completed in the project. Of these, 16 were completed based on the specification. The most significant of these accomplishments were the use of the process funnel in designing the cart checkout feature, as well as the use of the referral algorithm and responsive design techniques. The full list of requirements can be found in Appendix 27. At all times, efforts were made to ensure the storyboard and the application remained consistent. However, this was not always the case. The implementation of the product details page was different from the design because, and you state why. These are detailed in the implementation chapter. Of the 9 tasks that were not implemented, efforts were made to have these done. These efforts included looking at similar implementation online as well as looking at alternative options. As indicated in the implementation chapter, some of the reasons these were not implemented were due to challenges in learning the code to execute these features as well as the lack of time as the assignment became due. Right? Of course, so in looking back now, I want you to reflect on other things as well that, were done differently, things that you didn't work out as you planned it to as well. So those are part of the critical reflection as well. I want you also to reflect on the product that you've built. In this regard, when you look back at the product you built, you need to be critical about it as well. So when you discuss the product you built, I want you to discuss how it stands up as a software application that might be used by a third party. What I mean by that is this software you think ready to be implemented? Would you purchase this off the shelf by, have people purchase it? Like, for example, you'll purchase Microsoft Office Suite and you use it. Is it ready for use? What is it lacking? What are the strengths? What are the weaknesses? What are some of the limitations of this? And in each area, you need to find things. You need to be able to sell the strength, discuss where it's falling short as well, and what are future things you would do as well. Right, but we'll discuss future in the next section. So in terms of the product built, an example will be, given the 12-week duration allocated to completing the project, along with a long list of deliverables, it is reasonable to assume that there will be some flaws in the software artifact. The artifact pales in comparison to known websites such as Amazon. However, from an academic exercise that was created by a student who is new to programming, there are many strengths of the system. One of the key strengths of the database was the database development, which used a top-down approach. The tables were normalized to third normal form. With a normalized database, it eliminated update anomalies. Other strengths included the implementation of several of the advanced features, including the process funnel, design pattern, responsive design, which allows for application to work in various screen sizes, the implementation of a recommender algorithm, as well as use of gamification features. These are features typical of many e-commerce applications. An inherent weakness of the application is the need for an improved design aesthetics. The use of professional images as well as multiple images from a given product, as well as marketing-friendly product description can improve the impact of the application. Other areas of weakness includes usefulness, context, and emotional impact. Based on personas developed, the need for one-click checkout would assist persons who are looking to purchase a single item who do not have much time available for lengthy checkout procedures. Additionally, to encourage users to shop, the application currently requires users to register before they can add items to the cart. However, a preferred approach would be to allow users to add items to the cart first and register in order to check out the cart. Ideally, there are some limitations to the software being used as a third-party software for public usage. The use of multiple payment options, including PayPal, cryptocurrency, as well as integration of credit card payment. More professional graphics and videos on the website would be helpful, as well as for a given item, the ability to choose the size and color. The application has not been fully tested to ensure it can withstand security threats or high traffic loads. So notice here now we're talking about the shortcoming of this if you were to make it available commercially. What are some of the major things that you need to incorporate? This is beyond what you would have mentioned, the features you want to have. But if you want to put this on the market, what are some of the things you still need to incorporate and consider? And the last section is where you discuss the experiences gained. This is a personal journey that you have undertaken. And throughout this, definitely you should have grown. For example, project management, you had to manage a project, you had to manage a range of different tasks, right? All with short deadlines, etc., with limited resource, right? It's not like you had a team of people working with you. This was basically self-driven, right? Apart from that too, right? You had to focus on like time management, even writing, research writing skills. All of these are experiences you would have gained throughout the entire thing. If you look back at the skills, remember in the project planning module, we had to develop the skills. We listed the different skills as well you would have required for this. This here, in terms of experiences gained, I personally believe you should comment on the various areas of skills development that you would have undergone since starting the project. So a big part of the conclusion chapter really is to discuss your experiences throughout the project. What are some of the experiences you've gained? What are some of the areas you have improved in? What are some of the things you have learned, right? In this section, give a personal account of your performance during the project. Try to assess what you have learned during the process and how that might help you with other endeavors. It's a critical analysis and evaluation of your personal abilities and capabilities that have been identified during the project process. So the following slide will provide some areas to encourage you to write about. So what are some of those things you will consider writing about? So these are what students normally would have discussed previously. So you would reflect critically on the project process, right, rather than the product. We already discussed the product in the previous section. Now you will discuss the process. So identify significant elements in your experiences. For example, what were the most difficult accomplishments for you? What were the things that did not work out as intended? Right? What would you do differently if you were to undertake another project of this nature? What have you learned about your own strengths and weaknesses? Many students use this section to talk about project management, time management, personal development, such as research skill, critical evaluation skills, discipline, dedication. What about your knowledge gain in terms of learning PHP, SQL, HTML, CSS, etc., right? Even the importance of version control, etc., as well as the appropriateness of your software development methodology. All right. So these are additional things you could talk about. Successful students will typically have a knowledge and understanding of how to individual research plan, develop and implement a solution, organize, evaluate, and reflect on their capabilities to deliver a defined technical solution, even critique and evaluate their work, and develop a body of work within the context of appropriate legal, social, ethical, and professional issues. Okay, some of the other things you may develop as well will be delivering a realistic solution to a real-world problem, devise a project schedule to support the management of the project, and as well as produce an extensive technical report. So those are some of the things you can include in your comments. Let's take a look at a couple of them. So one of them would be in terms of project management. So in terms of, we're focusing here on the experiences gained regarding project management skills. I recognize the importance of developing a plan to effectively manage my project. The plan evolved over the course of the project. Specifically, having a detailed plan allowed me to identify at an early stage that the original plan timescale for the implementation were unrealistic. This was largely due to underestimates in the amount of time required to learn and apply new languages and technologies that I had chosen to use in my project. I originally intended to learn PHP, HTML, CSS, and SQL in parallel with the system development. However, this proved to be impractical as I had to acquire a certain level of knowledge in those technologies before any implementation could commence. This lack of knowledge, together with my own experience in managing a project of this scale, meant that the task I had identified for the implementation phase in my initial plan did not precisely capture the amount of work required to complete all the objectives in and discuss the section. By having an initial plan that contained a contingency factor which allowed for some flexibility, I was able to revise my plan schedule to reflect more accurately on work necessary. Unfortunately, this meant I had to amend the project's scope, revising some of the objectives. Let's look at another experience gain in terms of applying theoretical principles to solve a practical problem. As stated in section 1.2, through my studies, I've already gained a general overview of database design and some practical experience. Undertaking this project enabled me to apply and expand this existing knowledge by developing a standalone database system. In particular, I discovered the importance of normalization and AR modeling to effectively capture the data that had to be stored by the system and the relationships which existed between that data. In addition, I learned how to capture user requirements through the use of use case analysis in order to gain a clear understanding of the problem domain, as well as develop potential user interface design through the use of storyboards, which allowed me to define both the structure of the system and the layout of each page of the system prior to implementation. So what I've done so far, focus on two areas, right? So you need to look at other areas as well, right? In terms of experiences gained. As mentioned, I would encourage you to look at the skills that you discussed in the project planning module when you did your project proposal. And those skills areas are areas you would have been able to develop, and you could comment on those areas in terms of your skills development. All right. So that includes your critical writing, your research skills, etc. All right. So that brings us to the conclusion of this chapter, guys. I want to thank you as well for the time we spent together during this module. Of course, it was impacted by COVID, which meant that our relationship moved to online classes. However, I'm truly grateful for each of your participation. At this point, I'm more than happy to review your work, right? And I want to thank you guys and wish you all the best with your project. I know that with the additional time given, you guys are expected to deliver a really good project as well. So I want to wish you all the best. Take care, and I will see you guys definitely before graduation. All right. Have a blessed day, guys, and all the best.